So people are still just joining. So let's just take the time while people are joining to arrive here in ourselves. Take the time to settle. And maybe to feel the energy of the gathering here together. And I really like to kind of savor the moment of arriving and settling, and as our body comes to stillness, really bringing care, finding a position that's going to really support us, and noticing the care that we're bringing, just in something as simple as how we arrive. Maybe feeling the ground underneath us, the space around us, our own intentions in arriving here, and the sense of the gathering of other beings. Sangha in this community is coming together. So welcome. Lovely to see you. And for those of you who might be new here, I'm Sumedha, and I'm one of the core teachers with Sacred Mountain Sangha. And this Sunday Sangha is a lovely, really regular gathering. So, and just to say a bit about the timing, that will it lasts for an hour, the kind of principal part of the session, and there'll be some chanting, a meditation, some reflections, and then there's 15 minutes after the hour where you're welcome to stay on for sharing and questions if you want. So and for those of you who come really regularly, it's a delight to be here with you as well. And this is really nourishing for me too. I love these Sunday Sanghas. So, yeah. So let's start with some chanting. And I've just put the link to the chanting booklet in the chat. And maybe I should just say that if my internet goes, then I will come back. So please just stay. It's that I live off grid and it's occasionally slightly erratic. So, okay, so we'll start with the chanting, and really, as we do the chanting, it can be very helpful to really attune to our body, the vibrations, or the sense of how these chants have been chanted over the ages. Actually, these values have been cultivated in a very real way by beings over the ages. And so there's all of that practice, the energies they're evoking, the figures they're invoking as well. So really attuning to what is helpful in you, in your heart, in your being. So let's start with the refuges and precepts. On page 3 of the chanting booklet, I'll put the booklet in the chat again. And for many of us, we might be used to chanting these. And for me, I really love them as a mirror back into like the deepest aspirations to awakeness, to deep community, to reflection on the teachings, and also this reflection towards deep harmlessness, which could be such a powerful force, is such a powerful force in the world. And it can be like a really powerful mirror to chant this regularly, so that we keep remembering this capacity in ourselves. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intentionally taking life. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame sumichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from misuse of sexuality and the senses. Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from speech that is false, divisive, harsh and meaningless. Surameraya majapamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intoxication which leads to carelessness. And then let's chant the recollection of the Triple Jewel on page 4. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampano sugato lokavidu anutaro purisa dhamma sarati sata deva manusanam buddho bhagavati sawakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipasiko opanayiko pachatang vedita Iti supatipano bhagavato sawaka sango Ujupatipano bhagavato sawaka sango Nyayapatipano bhagavato sawaka sango Samichipatipano bhagavato sawaka sango Yadidam chatari purisa yuganiya tapurisa pugala esa bhagavato sawaka sango ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anutarang punya ketam lokasati. And then we could chant the reflections on universal well-being on page 7. So really feeling this aspiration coming into our own being and nourishing us, and also being able to send it back out into this life that we're part of. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action, and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. And then we can finish with the invocation of Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, so she who hears the sounds of the world, on page 12. Remembering and invoking the capacity for deep listening, returning our hearing, and compassionate response. Sa ha Quan Shu Yen Pu Sa Namo Da Bi Quan Shu Yen Pu Sa Namo Hala Danno Dola Ye Namo Hali Ye Polu Jai Di Shao Bola Ye Puti Sato Pa Ye Sado Pa Ye Moha Jai Luni Jai Ye Nan Sapan La Fa Ye Soda No Dashi Shijini Toyi Mangali Ye Palu Jidi Sharfo La Lang Topa Namo No La Jincha Shini Moha Pando Samye Ato Dasha Panga Shayang Sapa Sado Namo Pasado Namo Pache Mo Fata Do Dacha Tona Napalu Shilu Jaidi Diyashili Moha Puti Sato Sapa Sapa Mola Mola Moshi Moshi Rito Yunjuru Juru Jaimang Dulu Dulu Fasha Yedi Moha Fasha Yedi Tola Tola Dini Ni Sharfola Ye Jala Jala Mofa Mola Mudini Yeshi Yeshi Sherno Sherno Ela Shenfola Shali Fasha Shenfola Shaye Hulu Hulu Mola Hulu Hulu Shini Sola So Shini Shini Sulu Sulu Putiye Putiye Putoye Putoye Midiniye Jinsha Dini Shiny no Paye Mono Sopa Shitoye Sopa Moha Shitoye Sopa Ye Sherpan La Ye Sopa Nola Jinsha Sopa Mola Nola Sopa Shilu Sangha Mochaye Sopa Moha Shitoye Sopa Jajila Shitoye Sopa Botomo J Shitoye Sopa Nola Jinja Sopa Mopali Shang Jai Ye Sopa Namo Hala Danno Dola Ye Namo Hali Ye Polu Jai Di Shao Bola Ye Sopa Nanshi Jandu Mandola Bato Ye Sopa. Feeling these chants as they resonate in our being, maybe bringing a sense of support from the ages through which they have been chanted, the depth of this cultivation. The heart of it, this capacity we have to return our hearing to our true nature, and to take refuge in that which is awake, in the teachings and the nature that help us to awaken, and in this community, this sacred web of life that we're both supported by and able to give back into. So just feeling as we settle into our bodies. If there's any If there are any of these resonances that feel supportive, something you attune to from your own heart, your own being. Maybe sensing the support that is here with us. Support of Kuan Yin, support of that which is awake. And also with our physical body, attuning also to the support of the elements in this life that we share. In the ground underneath us, the space around our body. That is truly welcoming our being here. Maybe feeling the gentle touch of the air or how it's nourishing our body. Receiving support each moment with our breath, and we can breathe back out the care that we wish to offer into this life. Receiving nourishment with the in-breath and breathing it out again. We're giving, we're receiving in an endless cycle. Meaning also the support of rhythm, the rhythm of the breath. Sometimes if our being feels very agitated and the breath isn't too much part of that, to come back to the rhythm of the breath can be really helpful. And if the breath itself is agitated, maybe the ground, the space. And just noticing we can move our attention and choose what we nourish it with in this moment. And we can do this with great kindness, great care to our own being and to the life that we're part of. I'll be quiet for a couple of minutes and just finding what in you feels supportive, what feels resourcing, and where it's helpful, how it's helpful to place your attention. So we can end the meditation together there, but staying in touch with any threads that feel useful to stay connected to keep exploring. These can come with us. So welcome to people who are joining in the chanting. And I kind of wanted to follow up this week. I know Tanisra and Kittisaro last week had a session of listening and the sense of coming together in community, which is really important at this time. So I really want to acknowledge for those of you in the US particularly, and also all of us, the impact of the US elections. And I think what Tanisra and Kittisaro offered last week was really, really important. And I kind of wanted to follow up this week with the theme of like resourcing, which can seem like a really simple, obvious, it is a really simple, obvious kind of element maybe to touch on, but I think it's really important at this time that we remember our resources, because often when there's a big impact, as we know, then it's and there's a big and ongoing impact, we lose our center somehow, we lose our capacity to stay centered. And the Buddha really acknowledged this. It's like even in the Buddha's time, he talked about, like the winds or the floods that we get swept away by. And I think probably all of us can recognize at this time how difficult it is not to get swept away when there are very strong external forces happening that do seem, it's like there's a lot of delusion. There's a lot of hatred happening. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of greed. There's a lot of all of these things. And how do we remember our center in this? So a kind of simple theme and also a very pivotal, deep one, really, a call for me. How do we remember our center amidst these very powerful forces? So I know last week, Tanisra and Kittisaro, they did talk about listening. They talked about, or they came together in listening, came together in community with everyone here. And in a way, these are already reminders of the refuges. So like to come to that sense of deep listening, to come to the sense of community, to come to teachings that help us to find our center. When it's not easy to do that. And I really like that one of the translations of mindfulness, or sati, sorry, my dog is having a bit here. One of the translations of mindfulness or sati is just remembering that we need to learn to remember and to not lose our bearings even when there are very strong forces happening. And this is a kind of empowerment for me. It's like remember our power in the middle of what's happening. So we might notice how listening to each other, how community, how actions can help us in doing this. And for me in like coming to this sense of remembering and the kind of empowerment that's here, it's a very different kind of power than power over. So like there's a lot of what feels like it's happening at the moment is a lot of domination, a lot of power over, whether it's in the genocide in Gaza, whether it's in like the kind of things that are coming forward in the US election from Trump and the upcoming administration. It's like power over domination. And I remember being struck like many years ago by an article I read by Bhikkhu Bodhi that I've mentioned before, where he talks about moving to a culture of life rather than a culture of death. And he talks in that article of how we've already moved into a culture of domination often, you know, where we're objectifying each other, we're objectifying the planet, we're consuming, we're using, and then clearly now we're moving into almost another stage of it. And this is very frightening. And I think it's also really important to not lose touch with what we can enact in our lives, and that the Buddha was pointing to like 2,600 years ago. So I found this teaching by Joanna Macy, who many of you will know of. And she talks about power as process and the kind of sense of power with that for me speaks very deeply to how the Buddha was articulating the teachings, and a certain sense of interconnectedness of the deep resource that's there and how we respond from that place. So I'll put the link to that article with the video when this recording goes up. But in that article from Joanna Macy, she says, for instance, that to deprive someone of his or her rights, of their rights, is an exercise of force, not power. It diminishes the vitality not just of that person, but of the larger system of which we are all part, which is now deprived of their participation and resources. Therefore, the exercise of power as process demands that we unmask and reject all exercises of force that obstruct our and others' participation in life. So I think this is it's already taking us into a very big vision where we're recognizing that when we harm others, we're harming the bigger life that we're part of, and we're harming ourselves. And many great leaders, frankly, have had this vision. So Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Thich Nhat Hanh, like many beings have had a sense of this, but this, why I'm pointing to it and in this session is also that it feels to me like a primary part of the Buddhist teachings. So I'll read another passage from Joanna Macy, and then I'll explain how I think this is like profoundly resonant with the early teachings and teachings that we can draw on. So she says, also in this article, that through our pain for the world, we can open ourselves to power. This power is not just our own, but belongs to others as well. It relates to the very evolution of our species. It is part of a general awakening or shift towards a new level of social consciousness. We can see that our planetary crises are impelling us towards a shift in consciousness. Confronting us with our mortality as a species, they reveal the suicidal tendency inherent in our conception of ourselves as separate and competitive beings. So this is a really powerful statement, and for me it's a pivotal insight, and one which I feel is really present in the Buddhist teachings. So when I look at the Buddhist teachings, I see that the Buddha asks us to acknowledge what she says at the beginning: through our pain for the world, we can open ourselves to power. So the first noble truth there is suffering. And the rest of the framework that of the Four Noble Truths, there is a release from suffering, and the way to the release is the Eightfold Path. So, which encompasses the whole of our being. It's asking for right intention, right action, right speech, right vision. You know, it's like many factors coming together that is asking us to transform deeply in our being, so that we recognize, for me, that we recognize a certain interdependence, and that our ethical sense, our sense of vision, our sense of response in the world is coming from there in a way that releases greed, hatred, and delusion. And the model of the Buddha is one where he really seems to have embodied this shift in consciousness. So I've been teaching a course on devotion and the parami at the moment, and the parameters, which are qualities like generosity, kindness, truthfulness, resolution. He's said to have developed these over lifetimes. You know, it's like a deeply embodied way of knowing, where there's generosity, where there's ethical sensitivity, where there's truthfulness, where there's determination. These are all qualities. These for me come from a deeply rooted shift in the sense of who we are, actually. You know, so that we're actually belonging to this sacred web of life, and this is here in the early teachings. So he, you know, to the Buddha in the foundation of mindfulness, he talks about contemplate the elements inside, the earth element inside, earth element outside. Where are we so separate? So there's that weaving ourselves back into the web of life, and also remembering that we have this deep, deep knowing that can undercut the forces of greed, hatred, and delusion. And this is here in the very early teachings. So, and then when the Buddha, so after these lifetimes of development of very real qualities, when it's said that on the moment of awakening, you know, when he's challenged by Mara, the personification of delusion, he touches the earth. So he doesn't go off into some ethereal realm. He touches the earth. And so this awakening of our consciousness is right here. It's asking us to be here, and he doesn't turn away. He uses the suffering. He says, "I know you, Mara." He's familiar with it. So there's something about this call to awaken that through our suffering that I feel is really primary. So and he's asking us to remember this through things that are not very far away. He asks us to remember our resource through things that are not far away. So our breath, our body, the elements, our shared vulnerability. It's like these aren't kind of highfalutin, let's get into the spiritual realm. He's like, come here. Remember our vulnerability. Remember the nourishment of our breath, the rhythm of our breath. Steady. Help our mind to become, he uses these terms, malleable, wieldy, and steady. And we do this through attuning to our body, to our breath, to our elements, to our capacity for deep listening, to community. These things that are actually, they're within our reach. And they're very humble, really, but I think they can be deeply empowering, both because they help us to shift our vision and they can resource us when we're feeling like we're losing perspective or we're feeling overwhelmed. And this is a very alive process. It's not like a theory. There's a lovely image in the text where the Buddha says, in meditation, it's almost like we've got a king's taster who's, the king is eating his food, we being the king or the queen or the person, and there's a taster looking over the shoulder and it's saying, oh, what's the taste of this? Is this balanced? Is it bringing well-being? And so we need to be looking into ourselves and in a very real way questioning what really resources us right now. Do we need space? Do we need kindness? Do we need ground? Do we need action? How is our practice going to come through? So yeah, just to say a little bit more from Joanna Mason on Power as Process. There are a few key points for me. So one is she points to that we have a boundless heart and potential and that we're inherently open systems. So we are connected whether we like it or not. And that hurts. And it also means that we can be sensitive to suffering and the suffering of others, and we can respond from that interconnected place. And she also says, as much as we can grieve with the griefs of others, which is really important to be able to stay open to that, we can be strengthened by the strengths of others. So this coming together in community, offering what we can, receiving, and also the wider community, so our human communities, and also the web of life community that we're part of. So I remember a lovely exercise that I read once where she was like, think of a weed, so-called weed, and what quality, would you want to draw on? And so I was like thinking of dandelions and the resilience, they just keep growing. They just keep going. They're like, and they can break through tarmac, so we can attune ourselves back into the natural world, and we can draw on these roots. And in doing that, we're giving back into these roots. And this is really a strength because it's something that cannot be, it's like a live connectedness that we can really feel into. And she talks about power with in a beautiful way. She says it's not power over, it's power with, and it happens in interactions that produce value. So like as we come together here and we say, you know, remember the refuges, remember the precepts, maybe take in the nourishment of that, and then we go back out into our lives with that heart, and like we're producing interactions that produce value, that in turn can nourish. And it's like, again, this circular motion where I really like to reflect on the way actually in the connected life that is not just our, you know, the life we impose on the planet or each other. In a connected life, there's always cycles of giving and receiving. It's like they're not so separate. And we can start to feel into that. So we, you know, many of you are doing like really amazing things, you know, and there's the kind of well-being that happens that isn't for oneself, but there's a well-being that happens when we know we're acting well. So, when we know we're acting respectfully. So honor that. Don't let that be corroded. So, and she talks about also power with us as that which that happens in interactions that produce value and that enhance our conscious participation in life. So I find this very profound, because when we're faced with forces that are very difficult to meet, how do we keep our awakeness, our resource, so that we don't get completely overwhelmed, become unable to respond? And if we do move into that place, how can we respond to that with compassion and kindness, so that we can resource, we come back, do what we need to do. And remember our resources. So it's so easy to forget how connected we are, and when we're isolated, we're less able to respond well. So remembering our connectedness. And she says something else that is very powerful. So she also said power. It says power is like a verb. It happens through us. So for me, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I have this very alive question of like, well, so how do we, what kind of vehicle will we be? How do we stay aligned? And for each one of us, we're going to be feeling this out in our own being. And I do think, you know, if we're here already, then there's a chance that there are some things in the Buddhist teachings or in the community that it is going to be helpful. So to reflect on those resources, to reflect what in body or elements, or reflection on our shared vulnerability, or coming back to our breath, or reflecting on returning the hearing to its true nature, reflecting on balance, reflecting on process, how things happen. It's like what in all of these things might be helpful to us. Precepts, ritual, friendship, action, you know, all of these many different pathways are available to us, and we can be attuning and tasting into what is needed right now. And so this theme of resourcing sounds like really basic, and actually for me it's like a coming back to the well, you know, and what do we need to attune to that is going to help us to really stay here. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say on that. But in the yeah, when the recording goes up, I'll make sure that the link to this article by Joanna Macy goes up there, and I really encourage you to take a look at it. And I'll also put probably another couple of links on there as well, so that might be helpful as resources. So Yeah. So thank you for your listening, for your presence. Maybe let's sit together for a few minutes, and then anyone, and we can end together, and then anyone who wants to stay on for sharing or questions, you're welcome to do that. But yeah, maybe just settling back into our own listening. Into the sense of our own heart's alignment, what we wish to honor in this life, and recognizing the power of listening into this. The power that can help us to see through our own clouds, maybe of delusion, uncertainty. Help us to stay present with all that needs to be felt in our heart. Kindly, compassionately. And recognizing that we can come back to this. What might help us to come back here? Here we can take the breath as a reminder, or the touch of the earth. Or an image, or a felt sense. And helping our mind to settle, to find a sense of alignment, or settling, or listening. And remembering to nourish this. However we need to. Breathing in the support of that which is awake, of nature, of teachings, of community. And breathing back out, gratitude to the beings here, to the earth, to all the beings throughout the ages who have cultivated a heart of non-harming. And feeling the strength of this, sending that possibility back out into this world, however we can. let's end there. Thank you for your presence, for your practice, for this gathering. And anyone who wants to stay on, you're very welcome. And anyone who needs to leave, thank you for being here.